and thank you very much for joining me on the flip side. I have a wonderful guest this evening who is going to talk to us a little bit about our health, really, and what we can do to try to make ourselves a little bit healthier. And Clive de Carle will be joining us shortly. We're just going to have a little chat while the numbers stack up. So let's just make sure that we're all good and that I can see the chat. And yeah, I was just going to have a little chat with you about my week that has just gone by, where I have obviously went up to Newcastle last Tuesday to witness my team get knocked out of the semi-final of the Carabao Cup, which was a little bit of a blow. So I was there Tuesday, came back down Wednesday, and on Thursday, I thought it was about time I started doing some exercise again. So went out for a little run on Thursday, did a couple of interviews, and again on Friday morning, did a little podcast, and then played a little bit more golf on Friday, and got pipped. Well, was one up with one to play, and the guy that I was playing against, my mate Mark Blake, decided to birdie the last hole and sneak a half when they didn't really deserve it. But there you go. Saturday, went and watched my daughter play a fantastic game of netball in our under-14 league, where they beat the team in second place by 29-27. Very exciting game. And I never thought I'd get so tense at a kids' netball match, but when it's your own kid, it's really funny. And then Sunday, I was back on the television, but obviously not in this country because that would never happen again. No, I was back on Indonesian TV for Mola, covering the final against PSV Eindhoven game, which, if you haven't seen it, if you didn't get to see it, if you do get a chance to see it, I'd highly recommend it. Wonderful game of football. Ended up 2-2. That Dutch league is really shaping out to be something quite exciting this season. So if you are not aware of what's going on there, take a look at the top of the Dutch league, and it's going to be a fantastic second half of the season. So good evening, everyone on the chat who are all saying hi. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. So where have I got to? That was Sunday. Yeah. So I was up in London yesterday afternoon doing the game, came back down, and last night spent 2.5 hours on a Zoom call with the Doctors for COVID Ethics guys. A wonderful bunch of doctors and scientists and all sorts of different professions. And just had a bit of a chat with them for a couple of hours. And then today, managed to get out on the golf course this morning with my mates, and this time had a very comfortable 5-4 victory, but was a little bit annoyed because after 6 holes today, I was 2 under par, and I was swinging the club really well. I thought, this is good, this is nice. I then decided to bogey 3 of the next 4 holes, and then played the back 9 in also 1 over par and finished 2 over par, which is my handicap. It's kind of 1.8 is my handicap, but the round promised so much more than that. So I was a little bit disappointed. So I think we've got plenty of you on right now. So thank you very much. And I think it's time that we introduced our guest, who has got some fascinating insights into how we can make ourselves a little bit healthier. And I'm really looking forward to chatting to him. We've got a whole host of questions for him, not just ones from me, but also from you guys as well. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Clive de Carle. Good evening, Clive. Thanks for joining me.
Good evening, Matt. Great pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, no problem at all. I came across you earlier on this week. I'll be honest with you. My wife's hairdresser recommended that she had a look at one of your videos. And my wife came back and went, "Blimey, have a listen to this." And I think it was your little 12-minute video on the benefits of vitamin C. It was, and then I kind of had a little look about and looked on your website. And I thought, "Blimey, this guy's interesting. I think I need to talk to him." So that's why I sent you the email, and thank you very much for agreeing to come on. I wonder if you could give our viewers, actually, Clive, just before we start the questions, if you could just give us a little bit of your background and how you kind of got to where you've got today, because I know this all started a few years ago when you were in your early 30s, and a rather traumatic event happened to you.
Well, that's right. Basically, the worst thing that ever happened, which of course now is the best thing that ever happened, but it seemed pretty bad at the time. I went to a medical doctor, and I was already switched on to homeopathy and all sorts of things. But I don't know what came over me. I suddenly went to go to a doctor for something absolutely trivial, and the guy said, "Take this antibiotic, that'll sort you out." And it did sort me out. I was in hospital a few months later rather. I'd become so rheumatoid arthritis that one morning I couldn't get out of bed. I was like stranded in bed. I had my clothes and I couldn't get dressed anymore. I didn't have the strength to put my socks on. It's just ridiculous. So they put me in hospital for weeks and weeks and weeks. They kept trying to give me drugs, and I kept saying, "I'm not low on drugs. That's not my problem. Drug deficiency is not me." And so then they realized I was type 1 diabetic also from the antibiotic damage. And so once they started giving me insulin, which, they explained to me, you're just going to be injecting yourself 4 times a day for the rest of your life. Well, great. And so, of course, they wouldn't admit it was antibiotic damage. It's just bad luck, one of those things, whatever. And anyway, after a few weeks in hospital, I figured out what was wrong with me. The antibiotics had affected my gut, and I've now got mineral and vitamin deficiencies. So I got wheeled out in a wheelchair, started taking vitamins and minerals, changed my diet a little bit, not that much. And bam, all the arthritis went away, and they said that was impossible. But I looked like I was 80. And, that was 30. I'm now 68. So, 37 years ago or so. And I've never had an ache or a pain since, And so I realized, well, hang on a sec. And then my dad's best friend, he got cancer for the second time. And he said he'd been given weeks to live, but he wasn't doing that chemotherapy rubbish again. And they'd taken one kidney out, and he wasn't going to allow him to take another one out. And he's on his way. He tells me that what he did was he rang up Linus Pauling, the Nobel Prize winner. And Linus Pauling said, "Look, take 35 grams of vitamin C every day in divided doses, see what happens." So he didn't die in weeks. He died 20 years later, but not from cancer. And so I saw my own recovery. I saw my dad's best friend recovery. I thought, well, these doctors aren't actually what they're cracked up to be. So I had a contact lens company. I sold it, and suddenly I was in the luxurious position of thinking, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I thought, I know, I'm going to teach people how to get well. So I just studied, and then the internet came out. That was fantastic. So I became a serious YouTube addict for many years. And then I suddenly realized I had this opportunity. I could interview people, and they wouldn't charge me any money for the privilege of being interviewed. So I started interviewing my favorite health experts around the world. And lo and behold, I could ask them any question I liked. I was seeing clients at this time. So if I didn't know what to do with this client, I could ask the greatest expert in the world. And so suddenly I had this hundreds and hundreds of videos. And then in 2014, the government got in contact with me and gave me the choice of a £250,000 fine or take all my videos down in a 24-hour period. This is 2014. Really? Yeah. I was being television-like, they said. I was doing, Skype calls, but the thing was, I was working with UK Column, who you've probably come across.
I have indeed.
They were the real target. But myself, Ian Crane, a few people got sort of taken down as flack. Anyway, it inspired me because, it's so, how often is it that something's really bad just turns into something really good? So I suddenly thought, I know what I'm going to do. And I registered the name secrethealthclub.com. And all the videos that the government didn't want anybody to see, I started collecting in like an A to Z of, this is your ailment, here's your answer. And so that was 8 years ago or something. And now I've got a small team that work with me to turn the Secret Health Club into like a repository of knowledge, because I don't do consultations anymore. But what I want is for somebody who would have perhaps wanted what I know to go online and just look up, arthritis or Alzheimer's or whatever it happens to be. And then hopefully in order of interest, there are some articles and mainly videos, because you used to be able to find everything on Google, but obviously now it's all been scrubbed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way of sort of keeping the knowledge going.
Amazing. And the Secret Health Club, that's online. That's not on YouTube, no.
Well, no, I got chucked off again in 2020, right in January, because I started publishing Vitamin C can be the answer to what's just happened for the last couple of years. And so they really didn't like that. And so I got attacked by every agency that exists, because it was heresy, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, on that point, one of our viewers, who's called Once More, has thought, what are your thoughts on the efficacy of vitamin C on the spike protein, which has been created by COVID injections? I don't know if that's something that you've looked into.
Well, I've put out quite a few videos interviewing people. Well, how do we unjab people? Is such a thing possible? How would you do it? And there are a number of core basic ingredients that will sort of do it. And I can run through them a little briefly. Vitamin C is, like magnesium is the most important mineral. Arguably, vitamin C is the most important vitamin, because there's a medical doctor, Dr. Thomas Levy, who wrote the book Curing the Incurable about vitamin C, basically reversing every disease known to man. But on top of that, there are sort of cofactors. All you got to do really is look at what the governments of the world are trying to ban. I mean, they tried to ban NAC, N-acetylcysteine recently, and so NAC must be good. That's a given. There are massive hit pieces going on about vitamin C and vitamin D right now. So
I think I remember Matt Hancock. Didn't Matt Hancock stand up in Parliament very early on to deride vitamin D as a something that wasn't any good for you in terms of how it could help you against COVID? Do you remember that?
Well, I was out of the country for all that. I fled. So, I was in Mexico, so I didn't come back. But my experience with vitamin D, something like 16, 17 years ago or something, I think I was studying Dr. Mercola, who's a genius. And he was saying, look, vitamin D is the answer to stuff. So I started taking it. Now, up until that point, I used to get maybe 2-3 colds a year and a case of the flu. And it was, I just thought that was normal. I really thought that was normal. And I never got a cold again. For me, all that it was I was deficient in vitamin D in winter. I lived in Spain for 10 years. I didn't take vitamin D then. I never had cold either. I just had enough sun,
Yeah, sunshine, yeah. And a lot of the things that are the best for you are things that are actually free, which is quite nice.
Exactly.
One of our viewers, Kev Carr, has asked, can you ask Clive, what is a safe dose of vitamin C, and is it possible to overdose, and what are the effects of having too much vitamin C? I think I've heard you speak about this before.
Yes. You can overdose on anything. You can drown in water. So vitamin C, the body is self-regulating with vitamin C in a very similar way to magnesium, actually. You take too much, the body says, and you want to run to the bathroom because you're going to get diarrhea. Or before that stage, you might get a bit of a churning stomach, which is telling you, you've just done maybe too much at one time or too much in regular doses. So the thing is with vitamin C, if we were eating fresh fruits and vegetables, we wouldn't need to supplement with it. But unlike minerals, vitamins deteriorate with time and heat. So by the time that orange or that red pepper is on our kitchen table, the chances are it's a few days old and a lot of the vitamin C is already just gone. So pretty much all of us these days are low on vitamin C. And when I'm sort of feeling disciplined enough, I might take half a teaspoonful, maybe twice a day. It depends what I'm eating. But I've had people who have needed way more than that. I had a couple some time ago, and they were both under the weather, but they couldn't actually say what was wrong. They were just feeling tired and stuff. So I tell them, look, take half a teaspoonful, every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes, see how you go. Now, some people can't even handle half a teaspoonful. So if you're listening to this, you might want to start with 1/8 of a teaspoonful, see how that is, then 1/4 of a teaspoonful. It doesn't really matter, but you want to take it little and often. So The guy, he gets to, I think, 25 grams, which is a lot, 25 grams. And now he's in the bathroom. The wife gets to 85 grams and she's run out of daytime. Right?
Wow.
So she was much more ill than he was because her body was allowing that much in. So, there's a fabulous film, which is on the Secret Health Club, but you can get it on YouTube still, as far as I know, called Reverse Pneumonia in 3 Hours, where Dr. Andrew Saul, he's got pneumonia. He goes to another doctor, and Andrew Saul actually isn't a medical doctor, but he goes to a medical doctor and says, yeah, you've got pneumonia. So he takes 2 grams, about half a teaspoonful of vitamin C every 6 minutes, right? 2 grams, 2 grams, 2 grams. 3 hours later, he's turned off the pneumonia. His temperature's come back to normal. He's stopped coughing and sneezing. And I mean, people die with pneumonia. They'll put you in hospital for 12 weeks with pneumonia, And
Wow.
you see that it's been known for, 60 years that vitamin C reverses the symptoms known as pneumonia. I mean, it's been known for decades. Most of what I talk about is not new information. It's old as the hills, but it's suppressed.
Yes.
The drug industry, has bribed the media and bribed governments, and the profits on vitamin C, let's say it was 10 quid. The profits on a cancer medicine might be, I don't know, £250,000 per round, and some people take maybe 15 rounds. So you're looking at millions and millions against a few 10 quids.
It is amazing. That's what I've realised over the last few years, is that most of the stuff that we're being told by our government, if you actually did the opposite, you'd be far healthier. That's the conclusion that I've come to. And on that point, I was going to ask you, because I get the feeling that this is happening now from what I've seen. But are we actually being poisoned from our food supply, from the diets that we've been encouraged to have these days?
Well, unequivocally, yes. I mean, everything that's good that they don't want you to have. I mean, there are many people who say, well, we shouldn't be eating dairy. But let's say we accept that, well, we've eaten dairy for millennia. Let's say that it is okay. So you've got the cow or the sheep or the goat, and they graze on top, right? You don't have to dig. They kill some insects as they graze, but they're eating, or should be eating, wildflowers and herbs and all different types of grasses, not just one species of grass. But I mean, I have seen wild cattle in forests, and the cattle love eating the leaves from the trees. It's the cattle these days aren't getting a good diet. So, okay, one cow could conceivably feed, let's say, a family for many, many months. One consciousness has been sacrificed, apart from the insects. But a vegan, for instance, might plough the soil, exposing it to the sun. The moment you plough soil, lots of the bacteria and the insects and so on are wiped out initially. And if you're talking in terms of consciousnesses, vegans are mass murderers. And the government are trying to persuade everybody to go vegan or eat insects or whatever they're trying to do. So I find anything the government says, as you say, is questionable. Then they pasteurize milk. In fact, if you're a farmer who doesn't pasteurize milk, you will be penalized, and you can't sell the stuff in shops and so on. So what's the difference between pasteurized and unpasteurized? Well, unpasteurized is alive. So let's say you take the milk, you don't pasteurize, you give it to the baby cow will thrive. Pasteurize it, give it to the baby cow, but the baby cow might die because you've just murdered its lunch. It's like, it's full of all the things that a baby cow needs to grow. So we're eating this dead milk that's come from perhaps the Holsteins, the black and white ones that you see them walking along the road on the way to be milked, and their udders are like dragging on the floor. You think, that can't be right. They've been bred for milk. So the milk isn't the milk that we used to get. The milk we used to get, my grandfather had it delivered in a churn, and there was cream on top. It was quite thick cream, and it was yellow coloured. It was creamy coloured.
Yeah.
So the government lied and said, look, cream is bad for you. But historically the cream of the crop, the fat of the land, the fatted calf. History has always told us that the cream is the best. But the thing is about cream, you look at a government, right? Two things rise to the top, the cream and the scum. And the wrong one is running the world.
Yeah, isn't that the case? Absolutely right. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you about was bread and gluten, because when I was a kid growing up, I never came across anybody who was gluten intolerant and all that kind of stuff. What's been happening with our bread that has made people become gluten intolerant, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I never met anybody in my life that had a problem with bread. Gluten was an unheard of name. Yes, you got the occasional person with celiac, but that was really, really rare.
Yeah.
So, three things happened, really. I mean, obviously, they've been destroying the soil with chemicals, fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, larvicides, God knows what, for 100 years or something like that. So that's one element. But then they changed wheat. I think, I don't know whether it was a Nobel Prize, but they genetically modified wheat one way or another. Farmers have been hybridizing and genetically modifying for years, but they changed the chromosomal structure of wheat. They created dwarf wheat. When I was young, wheat was, I don't know, shoulder high or something.
Yeah.
Then burn the stubble to the ground, putting the minerals back. But now it's dwarf wheat, about the size of your knee or something. And I can't remember the numbers, but something like used to have 40 chromosomes and now it's got 24 or something. So most wheat is not what I would describe as wheat. It's some other monstrous thing. So people who eat spelt, people who eat kamut or the rye, I like rye. If you eat the old grains and they're made properly with, let's say, sourdough or even yeast, but the modern bakery, rather than as our ancestors did, they'd mix it all together with the yeast and they let it rise, then knock it back, let it rise again, knock it back, then they'd leave it for about 7 or 8 hours to prove. And in that proving process, there was a chemical reaction going on which made it safe to eat. But modern batch loaves, like you get, from the supermarket, they're baked in steam ovens. They don't bother with the old processes. They just bake them. That's my understanding. I might be wrong, but that's my basic understanding. So, and then they put glyphosate, Roundup, poison on the plants. And how Roundup works, you probably know, is that how it works is by killing everything except Roundup Ready that's been modified to accept it. But even then it damages it. And how it kills everything is it stops the plants being able to uptake minerals. So the wheat that we're getting is being sprayed from it. It might look all right, it might taste all right, but what's it doing to your insides? Well, it's dire.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? I heard you speak on a separate podcast, and you mentioned about organic foods, and also you mentioned something called above organic. What is, okay? So we've only just started to kind of look to start eating organic stuff now because of what we've realized over the last couple of years. But what is above organic?
Well, this is an arguable point, but Rudolf Steiner, who was, a very well-known sort of philosopher, I suppose, an educationalist, he researched the old methods of farming, and some of the old methods, the obvious old methods of planting with the phases of the moon, right? You want to harvest at full moon, plant at waning moon, and farmers of old used to do eccentric, esoteric things like filling cow horn or animal horns with stuff and burying them at certain times. And so there are biodynamic farmers. There are quite a few of them. The one I know best is in Forest Row, called Plorhatch Farm. And they have animals, they have plants, and they're so well kept that you can cuddle the animals. I mean, it's amazing. It doesn't smell bad. I mean, it's one of the perfect farms. And so, a lot of if they're bothered to be biodynamic, there's a certification, a bit like organic certification, called Demeter. Demeter, I think, was the god of plenty or something like that. So my experience has been the biodynamic farmers, even more than the organic ones, possibly, really care. their heart's in it big time.
Mm.
I had an organic farm for about 10 years, and what I observed of my fellow farmers around me was catastrophic. One year, this was in Spain, one year, my farm right next door, I was wandering around the land and I saw his field of almonds completely scorched, like dead. And I found him. So what happened? He said, oh, well, this was just when Spain joined the EU. He said they're selling 25 kilo sacks of fertilizer for like 50, half a euro or something ridiculous, right? So it was so cheap, I put on double, killed the entire field.
Oh, wow. Unbelievable.
Well, I saw in Spain, we used to have fireflies with green and yellow lights at night. And then one year, almost overnight, they were gone. And I was round at a friend's house one night, and he said to me, "Have you seen what's different?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, 2 weeks ago, when we were out here having a beer under the light, there'd be like a couple of thousand dead insects. Now look, and there were like 20. And something had happened, whether it was 4G or whether it was spraying, but bam, the insects were gone. And I mean, when I was young, if I drove from where I lived into London, if I drove at night in the spring when there were lots of insects around, at night I'd have to stop after maybe 3/4 of an hour to scrub the dead insects off my headlights so I could carry on seeing. The radiators would get blocked up with dead insects. It was Armageddon on your windscreen. Now your windscreen's empty. Those insects are gone. And the children these days don't know. They think it's normal.
Do you know what? That's actually a really good point. And I had not noticed that change. And you're right. You just don't get that volume of insects on the front of your car after long journeys.
So where have the bats gone? Well, where are the insects gone? Why aren't there as many birds? Again, the children don't know there are a lot of birds missing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Strange times. You mentioned earlier on, actually, about magnesium when we were talking about vitamin C, and you said that this is one of the most important supplements. What is it about magnesium, and what are the benefits of it of taking it regularly?
Well, I discovered it because it totally reversed my rheumatoid arthritis. Magnesium is what the mineral that comes when you eat plants, for instance, and people don't eat as many green leafy vegetables as they perhaps used to in the old days. There is no perfect diet, by the way. We're all different, and we all respond totally differently to the same foods. But magnesium is the mineral of relaxation. So if somebody's having a heart attack, for example, that would be the opposite of relaxation, you might say. What's happened is their heart has seized up because they haven't got enough magnesium to let it release. So an intelligent emergency room doctor, faced with somebody with a heart attack, would inject them straight away with Epsom salts, magnesium sulfate, which is the most water-soluble version, wham, and within a couple of seconds or something, their heart is going to release and they're going to be all right. So why do people have heart attacks? Why do people get myocarditis? Why do people have heart issues like angina, uneven heart rhythm? Because they're low on magnesium. That's almost always why. Heart attacks are any heart issues are usually a magnesium deficiency. Any pains are usually a magnesium deficiency. Panic attacks, anxiety, headaches, epilepsy, migraines, usually magnesium deficiency. Constipation, usually magnesium deficiency. People who have problems giving birth, magnesium deficiency, vitamin C deficiency. Magnesium deficiency is rife because magnesium is how we respond well to stress. And we're all stressed way more than we should be, right? Everybody in the world is stressed to hell. And so we're all running out of magnesium. Now, I take, on average, 4 to 6 magnesium capsules a day. Not 1, not 2. Now, that sounds ridiculous, but I often recommend to people, you've got to take the right type, otherwise you're going to end up with diarrhea. If you take the right type of magnesium, some people, believe it or not, for a day, 2 days, 3 days, might need 12 capsules a day. Now, they don't need that long term, and I
Sure.
often go without taking any. But if I'm stressed, I will take more magnesium because I can be anxious. I come across as calm, but I'm capable of being anxious. But when I'm calm, and usually magnesium is what does it, I had somebody last year who was suicidal, not pretending to be. Their life was shit. And I told them to take 12 magnesiums a day. And she rings me up after 36 hours, right? She'd taken 24 magnesium capsules. She just said simply, I'm not suicidal. That I mentioned to you earlier about trigger finger, because I've seen trigger finger straighten in 1 hour. In 1 hour.
Just from taking magnesium?
Magnesium and vitamin C together. The right type, the right amount. It can be quick. It can be really, really quick.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible stuff. This is just completely mind-blowing, all this information, really, given, that we don't get told this stuff. We've had a health emergency in this country, apparently, for the last 3 years, and yet none of this stuff really has been in the media at all. All of this stuff has been so suppressed. It just blows my mind that there are people that are actually evil enough to try to hide this stuff and suppress this information from us. And it takes a lot of becoming used to.
It's so simple. It could be taught at school. There's no reason why the average 15-year-old can't grasp the fact that, let's say, in winter, we don't get enough sun and we're not outside enough most of the time. So clearly, as vitamin D is not exactly sunshine, but it does a job a bit similar to sunshine. That if we took some of that in winter, maybe that's all we. That was for me. For other people, it can be maybe they're low on zinc, maybe they're low on vitamin C, other things. But for me, it was mind blowing. From having a cold every year to not getting one. And how much does vitamin D cost for a year? 20 quid will get you a really good quality bottle for a year.
Wow.
I mean,
that's cheap as chips. Yeah. I mean, if you're serious about your health, then that's next to nothing, isn't it? Well, actually, on that point, my wife has asked, what does someone do if they think that they're deficient in different areas? Can they go to their GPs and get tested for these kind of things? Obviously, I don't think you can for vitamin C, but for other stuff, is there a test available for this to show the deficiency?
Well, yes, there are tests for most things. The point is, though, that doctors don't study minerals or vitamins. They don't study cures or causes or natural products. If you said to your doctor, would broccoli be a good idea? They could get possibly struck off because they have to recommend the nice procedure. So it's drugs, and these drugs you do it this way, and only then can you try other alternative things. It's insanity.
Doctors just glorify drug pushers at the end of the day now.
Well, that's how I see it, because it's not in their interests to learn the real stuff. If they knew about vitamin D, and there have been all sorts of huge studies done over the years on vitamin D, where the people who take the right amount of vitamin D have less serious diseases, and I'm spelling this with a K, like cancer. It's illegal for me to talk about it spelled the right way. So all you got to do is look at countries from, let's say, Norway down to Nigeria. The more sun they get, the more vitamin D they're exposed to, the less cancer there is. It's massively obvious, and they've done huge trials to prove this sort of thing. And so nobody's ever died from a vitamin, right? Nobody in history has died from a vitamin. You can overdose with anything, but minerals, you have to be slightly more aware. But I mean, let me give you a good example of another vitamin, another mineral that costs about £20 a year, which is iodine. Now, did you know that what iodine does is it regulates temperature. So menopausal women whose temperature is out of whack, iodine. It regulates the thyroid, which regulates temperature. So people who have a thyroid issue, they're probably low on iodine. It regulates brain function. So if you've got brain fog and you want to have sharp, clear thinking, it's probably iodine. If you've got dry skin, you probably need iodine. Iodine goes with selenium. They go as a pair. So the Japanese, they have loads of iodine because they're eating seaweed with every meal, loads of sea fish full of iodine, right? The Japanese don't have a word for menopause.
Wow.
Wow. And so, and breast, spelt with a K, cancer is very, very rare there because iodine protects the breast. The most iodine in men and women is in the thyroid, and the second most in women is in the breasts. So why is everybody virtually low on iodine? Because they're bathing, drinking, cooking in chlorinated water. Worse, they're using fluoride toothpaste or bathing, eating, drinking fluoridated water, or they've just bought a new sofa, which because of government regulations is now off-gassing bromine as a fire retardant, which is knocking out your thyroid, knocking out all these things. Fluoride, bromine, chlorine knock out the thyroid because they're taking away the iodine, they're displacing the iodine. So it's rampant. And if you go swimming in a swimming pool, oh my God, now you want to take some iodine before you go swimming and afterwards to correct that balance. So, I mean, imagine this. You've got, let's say, a bacterial infection, and it's now going around the bloodstream. If you've got enough iodine in your thyroid, the blood goes through the thyroid every few minutes, the iodine will knock out pretty much any pathogen going. Think about prior to surgery, the surgeon will paint iodine all over where they're going to do the cut. Because nothing's, iodine will knock out pretty much everything. And because everybody's low on, and people notice the difference again, right, pretty quickly, usually within days. Suddenly, oh, my dry skin's better, thinking's, if you walk into a room and can't remember why you walked in, you're low on iodine. If you wear socks in bed, people say, well, you've got cold hands. Or if you're boiling hot, you're low on iodine. It's almost guaranteed. And as I say, hardly any money at all.
Incredible. Now you mentioned there about the water and the stuff that's in the drinking water. I mean, I've bought a water distiller, so I'll only drink distilled water now. And yet I've heard people deriding that, saying that, well, because you've distilled it, you've taken all of the goodness out of it. What are your thoughts on distilled water?
Well, the problems with distilled water, one is it's quite expensive to create your own distilled water, and usually the distillers make a noise, and also it's empty water. Rainwater, if the air was clean, would be basically distilled water, and so we would have drunk rainwater. And there are two schools of thought as to whether it's good or bad. One school of thought is that it will draw out the sort of materials that you don't want, and that's the beauty of water as the ultimate solvent. It will clean your body. Then the other argument is, look, it's empty. It would be better if it was brought back to life by adding, let's say, a pinch of sea salt, or my favorite, which is fulvic minerals, which are just soil-based minerals, also incredibly cheap. And if you can imagine, if you poured water through incredibly mineral-rich soil, so it's just water extraction, that should be perfect, because everything that's ever lived or died is, let's say, in the soil, in the ancient forest, every twig, every bird, you name it. So if you can get some ancient soil that's not polluted, and where the fulvic minerals I use, it's like 30 million years old. It's an incredible concentration of minerals. So a little bottle this size will last 4 months. You put some drops in water. First time I tried it, I'm not very sensitive to stuff. Give me 6, I might feel it. I tried fulvic minerals for the first time. I tried lots of types. None of it worked. When I found the right type, I woke up the next morning feeling different. And that doesn't normally happen for me. It was like my body felt a nicer place to be in. I felt more limber, and it was weird, really bizarre. And I've been studying it because I've been looking at what the Chinese have been doing to reverse cancer with a K. And they were giving people baths and the stuff. They were using huge quantities of it. And And so the very first person I gave it to, because I was so impressed, I sent off for like a gallon of the stuff. And I gave it to one of my clients who was, she was 3 months pregnant, and she'd been suffering from really bad morning sickness. And she rings me up, I think 2 days later, and says the morning sickness has stopped. So look at it this way. I don't think women are meant to get morning sickness. I would say it's a symptom of nutrient deficiency or something was wrong. So I'm not saying that fulvic minerals are the way to reverse it full stop. But this particular lady, it was. It was just that tiny change, getting all the trace elements, everything from the soil that should be in the food that's grown but isn't. Fulvic minerals are a good representation of the tiny trace elements that are just gone these days. And so I have a number of incredible results with it. People, there's one woman, I've got a video on this. She realized she was going to die, and she'd been in a wheelchair for 2 years. She was in bed. She'd stopped eating some time ago, and she saw me on UK Column years ago, and I sent her some fulvic minerals for a few other things, and she said the moment in the water the fulvic minerals touched her lips, she knew she wasn't going to die. And indeed, she went from being wheelchair bound to back on her feet within, I think, about 6 weeks.
Wow, that's quite incredible.
And I was giving a talk, and she came up a step. I was on the first floor. She came up some stairs. I mean, for having been wheelchair bound and bed bound, it was just incredible. Yeah,
amazing stuff. I was going to ask you actually, because you mentioned there about you woke up one day feeling, just so much better and brighter. I've kind of had that feeling over the last couple of weeks, because about 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had Jason Vale on my show here. Yes, and I had just done a 7-day juicing where literally all I had to eat or drink for 7 days was his juices, 4 juices a day for 7 days, and I found it was amazing. Not only did I lose 10.5 pounds, I think it was in a week, but I just felt so much better in my body and cleaner in my body. And when I go and play golf, I would normally, for the first few holes, take a few holes to warm up, because the old body takes a bit of getting going. And I'm now finding that when I wake up and I go and play golf, I don't have this stiffness that I used to have, and I feel so much better for it. I've tried to eat a lot more healthily since I've done the juicing, and it seems to have made a real difference.
Yes. Well, it could be a number of things. I mean, clearly, most of us need a good clear out. I mean, if somebody's really deep, toxic, I might say to them, look, do a vegan diet. If you can handle it for a few weeks or a month, juicing, so much magnesium in most of the vegetables, for instance, that would have gone into the juicing, and it changes your alkalinity. I don't think it's a good idea full time.
No.
I think there's a time for everything.
Yeah, I don't think he recommends it as a full-time thing, but as a a kickstart towards a healthier lifestyle.
Exactly. I saw one guy who had been sent home to die from the hospital, and we put him in an organic raw juice diet because he couldn't eat; he was too weak, and he didn't die. And he didn't die. We used electrotherapy with him as well. But just because somebody said you're going to die, don't believe it. Be very weird. Could you give me 2 minutes? Because when I took this antibiotic years ago, it left me type 1 diabetic. And while type 2 diabetes is easy to cure, you can reverse type 2 in 30 days generally. And I got type 1, and my alarm has just said I've got to eat something. And so give me back in 2 minutes, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem, Clive. You crack on. I'll just have a little waffle with the guys and have a little look down the chat as well to see how we're all doing in there. I'm trying to multitask here. There we go. What have we got here? Let's have a look. All sorts of questions for Clive going on there. But it's been absolutely fascinating, I have to say, chatting to Clive. And it's just been really enlightening having different people on with different points of view who I'm not saying that everything is right, but listening to these guys, it kind of makes a lot of sense what's going on in the world at the moment with these issues that a lot of people are having. And when you look back, hundreds of years, these issues that weren't there, and the way that our diets have all gone. And I have to say, it's been I found it quite enlightening the last couple of years, and I've really, certainly over the last few weeks and months with my wife, we have definitely tried to eat much better. My wife went to a farm shop this morning. I don't know if you saw yesterday, we were speaking about farm shops, and we found a good one about 15 minutes from here, and wife went and was very excited when she came back to say, that's amazing, and I was like, well, as long as it's cheaper than Waitrose, that's a right result. No, I'm really looking forward to tea time now, because we're actually getting good, nutritious food that is not filling us with loads of rubbish. And as you guys know, my diet has not been particularly good down the years. Although weirdly, I've not really been very ill down the years either. I think I've got quite a strong immune system, hopefully through the fact that my genes in my family are pretty good, and hopefully they'll stay that way for a long time. But I'm trying to do something a little bit better. I'm feeling a real benefit from not eating. And one of the biggest things is, I might have mentioned to you guys before, when I started January, was that I wasn't going to drink any Coca-Cola, and I wasn't going to eat any chocolate through the month of January. And I pretty much did that. I certainly didn't touch any chocolate in that month. But on the last day of the month, I was up in Newcastle, and I was in the hospitality, and I was given a Malibu and Coke, which, as you know, is my favourite drink. And so, yeah, I did have a couple of Malibu and Cokes on the 31st, but that's the only time. And I still haven't had any more Coke into February either, because I just feel so much better not having all that sugar inside of me. And so there's been a real positive change, and it's certainly, I feel a difference in my body with the way that things have gone over the last few weeks, and it's really kind of encouraged me to want to keep it going. Hence the healthy eating from the farm shops, and the trying to buy organic food, which I know is sometimes a little bit more expensive, and so that's kind of the really annoying thing. And that's kind of the thing that has always made me a bit suspicious of the government, is because all this organic stuff is what's best for us, and yet you would think that because it's really good for us, you would think that it might be the cheapest option. But no, the cheapest option is obviously all the stuff that's not very good for us, and they kind of almost force you by default into buying stuff that isn't particularly great for you, which is a little bit annoying, I would say. So, but it's been a really positive experience for me, and it was the juicing thing really kicked it off. So that 7 days that I had of just juicing really gave my body a good clean out, and it just made me feel like I don't want to waste it. And as Clive said there, it's not really a long-term strategy, although I've seen that Jason does a 28-day plan. But I'm sure that Jason wouldn't expect everyone to do that every single day of the year. But I think it's a really good way to give yourself a kickstart, and to really kind of feel how good your body feels after that, and encourage you to try and eat a little bit more healthily. Which, I mean, I never thought I'd be saying that, given what my diet has been like for the last few years. Which it's just quite incredible. So the questions have been firing in on the chat, and I can't always keep up with the chat questions. So I'll try and get a few more of the questions. The good thing is Clive is not particularly restricted with time this evening. So if you've got any questions for me while Clive is away, then feel free to get them in the chat, because I can now take a look at it, because I'm not trying to engage with Clive and look at my next questions for the same time. Clive is back, which is excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Clive. I hope you're feeling suitably refreshed.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Because I think we've got a whole load more questions coming in. If you don't mind, I'll start with JJ, who has asked, the CDC in America are trying to regulate vitamins. How can we make sure that they don't mess with vitamins? And can you name some recommended suppliers at all?
Okay. Well, how we stop messing is total peaceful global revolution where we stop governments entirely. I don't see any other solution long term to ending government as a thing, ending politics as a thing. As far as which brands to go for, I think probably 90% of all the supplement companies out there are controlled by the bad guys who don't want you to be well. I mean, the big high street brands, let's say you want to go and buy some magnesium. If you go to the high street brands or the supermarket and you buy magnesium, I can almost guarantee you it'll be the one that will end you up in the bathroom with diarrhea without giving you enough magnesium to stop the pain or whatever you're trying to use. So getting the right type is essential. Most magnesiums work, but there are a few that you don't want. You don't want magnesium oxide. You do not want that one. If there's magnesium oxide in the blend, avoid it because that's cheap and nasty, and that's the one that gives you diarrhea. The answer to where to go at the risk of I can't advertise, so I can't tell you that I have a brand myself. I wouldn't be allowed to tell you that, and it's I wouldn't also be allowed to tell you that the brand name is very similar to my name. It's extraordinary. Who would have thought? So I can't tell you that.
Okay, no problem.
And if I could tell you that, which I can't, there is magnesium there.
Excellent. We get your drift. Thank you very much. Now, we were speaking about water before, and I forgot to ask you, is there a recommended amount of water that we should all be drinking each day?
Well, again, it's one of those things that's disputed. I think we are, on one level, we're self-regulating. On another, a lot of people mistake the signal for I'm thirsty with I'm hungry. Now, my answer to it, when I'm well behaved enough to do it, is that you have two things on your desk. You have a jug of water and a glass of water, and if one of them is empty, you fill it. The problem is when the water's in the kitchen, it's not right in when it's in front of you, you're likely to drink it. If it's in the kitchen, you're likely not to.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big weight tricks, people know this for decades, is that if you're hungry, drink a lot of water. That'll fill you up, and you can maybe skip a meal or whatever you want to do. But I think most people are dehydrated.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. Now we spoke about juicing and detoxing before. What are your thoughts on fasting? Because a lot of people have said that they think that this is a really good way of doing things and kind of detoxing the body a little bit through fasting. Have you ever tried that?
I have. Some 15 years or so ago, I went to a little island off Thailand that they had a place called the Sanctuary, and what they did was that they gave you the equipment to do an enema every day yourself, and some people reported weird stuff happening. The first time I ever actually recommended somebody do a bowel cleanse was I recommended to this girl. She took bentonite clay and psyllium husks with lots and lots of water. The psyllium husks swell up and they fill you up. If you're doing a fast, psyllium husks are great to give you a feeling of being full. Anyway, she rings me up the next morning, so you never guess what came out. She said a small piece of yellow Lego came out, and she was 28 years old, and she didn't remember swallowing it. And so you're stuck there for, 25 years or something.
That's amazing.
So a good clean out can be quite useful. And then the idea was that you got fresh coconut juice a couple of times a day, because apparently the juice from a fresh coconut. In Second World War, if they didn't have blood plasma, they actually injected coconut water into people, right? Also, diluted seawater works as well. Anyway, I was told that if you eat a couple of juice, the water from a fresh coconut a couple of times a day, that will give you the nutrition in terms of minerals and stuff that you need. And so I started doing a fast, and I was amazed how easy it was. I thought by day 3 I was going to be climbing the walls with hunger. No, it was weird. I got through the hungry stage almost right away. It was really weird. I think, let's say there was a food shortage in the world. I think there are going to be 2 types of people: the survivors who view it as a nice fast, nice opportunity to lose a bit of weight or whatever it is, then the others who are going to starve to death. And how much is in the mind? I think a lot of it could be in the mind. Anyway, I was planning to do it, I don't know, a few days. I got to like day 7 and day 10. Anyway, eventually I had to come back to England. And by this time, I hadn't been eating for quite a while. I'm not quite sure how long.
But you were drinking during this time?
Drinking lots of fluids and the coconut water and stuff. Anyway, so I come back to England, and I live in the country, so I'm driving back from Heathrow. I think, actually, this is my last chart. This is the last organic food shop that I know of on Chiswick High Street. I better stop there before I'm out on the M4. So I go into this health food store, and normally I know exactly where I go. I go to the cheesy biscuits, I go to the nuts, and I go to all this stuff that often comes in packets. And I was stunned. I just wanted some fruit. I wasn't at all interested in the stuff I used to be interested in. Like in 3 weeks, I totally reset what I should or shouldn't be eating. It wore off, it didn't last. But, so I was surprised how easy it was. I'm sure it's not going to be easy for everybody, but for some reason it was for me. Maybe because I was dreading it. I thought it'd be terrible.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there about the power of the mind. Do you think, why do some people have lots of willpower and yet some people have none at all? What is it about people that have these different strengths and weaknesses?
Self-love. I mean, okay. I'm somebody who has terrible willpower. Right? I am not disciplined.
But you fasted for so long, so there must be some willpower there.
It surprised me. I think we all have willpower when we choose to exert it, and then sometimes maybe through bad habits or depression. I think a lot of people have bad habits and addictions and low willpower because at one level they're not happy.
Yeah, on the subject of that, actually, we had a question about that. Louise had asked, she suffered from depression since childhood, actually, and has been on antidepressants until she came off them about 6 months ago. She was on them for about 20 years. But she doesn't want to go back on them, but depression has set back in. She takes St. John's wort, which hasn't had any effect. Is there anything else she can try before going back to the antidepressant tablets?
Well, lots of things. My brother committed suicide when he was on antidepressant tablets, so I'm not a great fan.
Yeah.
Magnesium is the first one to try, and don't be afraid of it. See if you can take 2 at a time and take 2 6 times a day for a few days, 2 3 days, something like that. Just see how you get on. Maybe that will change how you feel. For some people, vitamin D can make a big difference. Just, some people call sunshine the happiness. Do we feel better when we're out in the sunshine? Yes. So then there are things like, well, what do they give? Let's say they put somebody in the mental institution, they give them lithium, right? And there are horrible side effects with lithium, but it sort of can work. So there's another version of lithium called lithium orotate. Uratic acid is one of those things, I think, in mother's milk. Lithium orotate. It's 100 times less nasty than lithium carbonate, which is what they give you in the hospitals. For some people, not everybody, some people, it's like night and day. It's a switch. Why I was low on lithium, just like you might be low on magnesium, you might be low on selenium. It's just another mineral. It's got a bad reputation because of its connection with mental institutions. But for some people, that's the answer. For some people, let me think a few other interesting ones. 5-HTP or L-tryptophan. For some people, that's what they need. I mean, let's just look, if I may, at happiness and pleasure, right? Because people confuse the two. So pleasure is physical. Could be drinking, smoking, sex, whatever. It's a physical thing, and it boosts your dopamine. And kids, adults, are checking their phones every 5 minutes, every 1 minute for the dopamine rush. And the problem with dopamine is that our body will self-regulate. So let's say you discover booze or cannabis or whatever, and you go, wow, why didn't somebody tell me about this before? And you find the thing that gives you that dopamine rush. And then maybe if you're unfortunate and got the addictive personality, now you might need 2 beers and 3 beers and so on, because the body keeps down-regulating dopamine. But happiness, on the other hand, is different to pleasure. It's not physical. You can get happiness just by looking at the sky or the trees or thinking about somebody you love, or loads of ways to make serotonin, the happiness chemical. Now, while the body has the mechanism to down-regulate dopamine, there's no mechanism in the body to down-regulate happiness. Can't get too much serotonin. But there is one thing that does down-regulate happiness, down-regulate serotonin. Dopamine down-regulates serotonin. So the more pleasure you seek, potentially, the less happy you'll be.
Wow.
Which explains addiction on one level. The very thing that was making you happy is now making you unhappy, because you thought you were happy when you were experiencing pleasure.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually. Yeah, I'd never thought of it like that.
And the advertising industry wants you to confuse the two.
Yes.
Get these new Nikes and you'll be happy. Well, really, but it might seem like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh, fascinating thought. I've got plenty of other questions if you're all right for time.
I am. Let me just add one more thing to the happiness thing.
Yep.
Depression thing. On the Secret Health Club, there is a happiness section which covers quite a lot of areas. I mean, there are a couple of ones that are funny, amusing, whatever. If somebody's depressed, if they stare themselves in the eye in the mirror and smile for a minute, what happens is it releases smiling releases some brain chemistry, apparently. And so if you try smiling at yourself for a minute in the mirror, I would almost defy you that unless you're really unwilling to be happy, it'll probably cheer you up from, I don't know whether it's serotonin or whatever that you're getting. The other one is that helping other people is, I think, what we're here for. And so if you're desperately unhappy, go out and help somebody, because they might say, thank you, I love you. What a wonderful thing and you're going to feel good.
Yeah.
And people forget that it's all about the self, isn't it?
I think that's fantastic advice. In fact, the one thing that I normally end my live streams with before I say goodbye to all the people listening, they're probably bored of me saying it, but at the end of every live stream, I say try and do something every day that makes someone else's life a little bit better, and that feeds into it perfectly. So I think that's fantastic advice. Toxic metal poisoning. I've heard you speaking about this before, and the value that perhaps sulfur can have on that. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we're all poisoned with toxic metals, unfortunately. All of us, we're breathing it, drinking it, we're exposed to it all. So there are a number of things that you can do to get the poisons, the toxins out. Sulfur, as you say, is one of them. So the moment you put sulfur in the body, sulfur reacts with metals and various poisons to sulfate them, and sulfates are water soluble. So let's say some psychopath, we'll call them a dentist, put some mercury amalgam with nickel and other poisonous metals into your mouth when you were a child for money. So let's say you've been attacked by a psychopath. Now, the psychopath also said, "Oh, brush your teeth." So, in ancient society, they didn't brush their teeth. They didn't have fillings. They didn't, all this dental rubbish is fairly new. So every time you brush your teeth now, the child is brushing off little atoms of mercury. So an atom of mercury will come into the body, into the bloodstream, and every human cell it meets, it will destroy. Now, it won't be weakened by that, not for at least the next 50,000 years or something, and it will carry on destroying every cell. But if you put sulfur into the body, and sulfur-rich foods would be things like ginger, health properties, garlic, health properties, cruciferous vegetables, lots of foods, eggs even, have lots of sulfur in. And sulfur will allow that atom of mercury to be sulfated. Now it's mercury sulfate, and you can pee it out, sweat it out, get it out. And so vitamin C will get rid of a lot of toxins. Selenium is the primary thing to, as far as I know, to get mercury out. Selenium will react with mercury, and now you can get rid of it. If you're eating a lot of tuna fish, lots of mercury in there. There are many agents actually that will detoxify metals. But the point is, you want to know what you're doing, because let's say that somebody's constipated and now they take a bundle of sulfur, they mobilize the toxic metals out of the cells, and now they're in the bloodstream. Now, maybe going through the liver, the kidneys. Now, let's say they're constipated. Well, they've now got it out, and it should be out of the body, but they're not, because they're constipated. So now it just goes back in again, and they feel worse. Right? So if you're going to detoxify, if you're going to go for a detox, make sure your bowels are working properly. So, in an ideal world, we should have a couple of bowel movements a day. For eating lots of carbs, we should have one bowel movement after every meal, maybe. Most people are lucky to have one a day. I've had people who say, well, I haven't been for a couple of weeks. I mean, this is insane. And
Wow.
Why do people get bowel cancer? Why do they get IBS, Crohn's, whatever? It's because they're not having regular bowel movements. If it's rotting inside you, festering there, I mean, imagine 12 hours of something nasty stuck on your skin with cling film. Well, the skin is going to be, it's going to get sort of tumorous and nasty. And so people who are constipated often end up with bowel issues. And why they're constipated? They're probably low on vitamin C, but almost certainly low on magnesium, and they may not be drinking enough water. But magnesium deficiency is the answer for a lot of bowel issues. You get yourself regular again. I mean, I had actually, talk about fasting. I had somebody a couple of months ago who phoned up to say he'd been doing a fast. He was going to do a 21-day fast, and he was now, I think when he rang me, he was 14 days in. He said, the curious thing, I was still shitting for 8 days after I started the fast. And I said, well, I think you were backed up 8 days. You thought you were having a bowel movement every day, but how long had it been sitting there? I mean, I don't know what other explanation there is. So, there are ways to test how blocked up you are. Some people will eat loads and loads of beetroot and then watch to see if it comes out red, or swallow loads of sweet corn and look for undigested sweet corn and stuff. But, there's so many bowel issues out there.
So on that subject, a few years ago, my wife had colonic irrigation, and she thought that I should do it too, and so I had a go, and you see these tubes. This is bizarre. It's a bizarre thing, and you see these tubes, and you see all this stuff coming out of you through these tubes. Is that something that is helpful in that situation?
I don't know. It's not something I've ever felt drawn to do.
I didn't feel drawn to do it again. I'll tell you that much.
Enema seemed relatively natural. You just use a bit of gravity, but having a machine pump stuff up you, I mean, I don't know. I just don't like the sound of it. Yeah, right. People say it's fabulous.
Oh well, yeah. You never know. When we spoke about the heavy metals, the toxic metal poisoning that we've been having, and there's so much of it in our water, and you spoke about the fluoride when you brush your teeth and all that kind of stuff. When we sit in a bath, and we're using the water obviously from our homes, and obviously sitting in a bath, you're going to absorb some of that. Is there anything that you would think that maybe we should put in our bath water if we do like long baths, which I love? I can sit in the bath for 2 hours quite easily. Is there anything that we should put in the bath to help us,
Yes.
when we're
Absolutely.
absorbing all that water?
Give me 1 sec.
Have you just happened to have something in your room for this? Did you?
Something in the oven, and I smell this burning smell. So I mean, the first thing is, if you can, phone up your water supplier and say, "Tell me about the water." I rang up mine when I moved in here about 8 years ago, and I said, "Give me a report of the water," because I wanted to know, is there recycled sewage in the water? Has it come through the sewage treatment processing plant? Because if so, they can't filter out most of the drugs. Their filtration system is coarse. They're not able to get rid of the antibiotics, which is the most common drug, or birth control pills, rather than the most common drug. So, why is there a lack of manly men out there? Well, maybe it's all the birth control pills in the water. So luckily, where I live, the water was clean and pure, and all they were doing was poisoning it with chlorine, the poison gas that killed everybody in World War I, and they're adding aluminium sulfate to make the water crystal clear, even though the aluminium sulfate, of course, is linked to Alzheimer's and dementia, but we won't mention that. But if you're unlucky and you've got fluoride in the water, which is a nerve brain damaging agent, fluoride is deadly. You don't want to brush your teeth in it or anything like that. Really, you got to filter that stuff, because everything goes in. Think even a big thick cream. People who rub creams into their hand, it's just gone in. Now it's in your brain, in your bloodstream. So let's say you're washing your hair with shampoo, right? And it's not natural shampoo. Where's it going? All those chemicals, all those colorings, all the smells going right into your brain. What about the conditioner? Same deal. What about soap, right? We mentioned the sewage processing plant. They sell the fat. In the sewage plants, they separate the fat from the solid matter, from the liquid. What do they do with the fat? It's called soapification. They sell your sewage to soap companies.
What? Wow. Are you kidding me?
No, soapification. Well, they want to sell every shit they can. Anyway, so
wow, that's how Marmite was made, isn't it? Selling the.
It was the leftover yeast from the brewing.
Yeah, and I love Marmite.
When I was young, Marmite was totally different to now. Nothing like now. It's terrible. All the foods have been changed. Everything's been changed. Nothing's real anymore. I went into Lidl years ago with a camera, the idea of trying to find anything in the entire store that was natural, and I'd got most of the way through the store when they realized what I was doing and threw me out. But I couldn't find it. Even the organic stuff wasn't really right. Wow. It's difficult to buy food these days.
So one of our viewers, Yukira, has asked, how bad are artificial sweeteners in hot drinks?
Super bad.
Yeah.
Super bad. I mean, they'd never be passed today. The only reason they got, Donald Rumsfeld, you remember that nice American man? He was responsible for aspartame. Which is all that sugar-free stuff. If I was forced to choose between sugar-free with artificial sweeteners or sugar, I'd go for the sugar every time. I'm lucky. I don't like Coca-Cola or any of those drinks, so I'm fine. But the artificial sweeteners are brain damage. Pure brain damage. If you want to end up stupid, eat modern food. Eat monosodium glutamate. Go to the Chinese and have a cheap meal fried in genetically modified oils. My local Indian down the road, I was walking past it and they were chucking out their tins of oil, and it said genetically modified rapeseed oil. Now, when I was young, rapeseed oil was used for machinery. Nobody ever dreamed of eating the bloody stuff or cooking it. And now it's, they try to con you it's a health food. It's like hemp protein. Hemp protein. So what they do in the hemp industry, they take the hemp seeds, They squeeze out all the oil, and instead of throwing away the junk, they sell it as hemp protein. Who would have chucked that away? Just like soya milk used to be thrown away in the production of tofu and stuff. Nobody would drink the stuff. Japanese never drink or eat soya unless it had been processed like soy sauce or something.
Amazing. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you, which I wanted to ask. Obviously, I'm a bit younger than you, and I'm wearing glasses. I noticed that you're not wearing glasses. But is there anything that we can do with supplements and things to actually improve our eyesight as we get older?
Yes, there is. Vitamin C is pretty good for eyesight. Eating nitric oxide boosting foods like beetroot. Nitric oxide is why Viagra works. It makes the blood vessels sort of expand and stuff. The Russians are ahead of the game with eyes. Back in probably maybe the 80s, the Russian spies who'd been spying on Americans had found out that the Americans had got one of the ultimate weapons, which was a blinding laser. They could fly a B-52 way up there, flash this incredibly powerful laser, and everybody with their eyes open on the battlefield would be blind. So obviously they'd never used that weapon because it's too cheap. They want a weapon that costs 10 million quid and goes bang and no one. So a blinding laser, that's never going to work. And anyway, but the Russians believed it would. They were seriously scared. So they put over 100 of their scientists on to trying to repair retinas. How do you repair retinal damage? And what won out at the end, they used a frequency device. They developed a frequency device that I've got one on my desk like this, that they could take into battle with them and get people out of pain, just a little device. And but they developed peptides. So peptides, if you take protein, we are protein, aren't we really? So if you take protein from an animal, break it down, it breaks down into amino acids and peptides. Peptides are like small amino acids. Anyway, they discovered that by extracting peptides from the eyes of cows, the retinas of cows, they could provide a supplement, and I'm taking it myself actually, like this. And they found that they just had to give the peptides for maybe a month, and then they could take a 5 months break and take it again about 6 months' time, and it would trigger the body to rebuild retinas. So the Russians have been way ahead of this. They're doing all sorts of things in clinics there, which I don't know whether there's anybody in England do it. In America, there are people doing some advanced stuff. I interviewed, when I was working with UK Column 10 years ago or something, Dr. Jerry Tennant, I first came across about 35 years ago, the incredible ophthalmologist, restoring sight, again using the Russian type of technology and other methods. Secret Health Club. Go on to join the Secret Health Club, look on the eye section, and I've interviewed Jerry Tennant and various experts, lots of stuff about the Russian stuff. There's also a book you can buy called The Eyesight Saviors. It's a small book, The Eyesight Saviors, which explains the Russian technology. Now, I'd like to say that while I believe that all health information should be free, so all the videos I do, everything I do used to be available on YouTube, but now it's on Odyssey and Brand YouTube and one or two other platforms. But the Secret Health Club I do charge money for because I've got staff to run it and I need to make a living. But if anybody watching this wants to be a member but they can't afford it, they can email me, clive@clivedecarle.com, or sorry, info@clivedecarle.com would be better. And if you can't afford the fee, tell us what you can afford. If you can't afford anything, I'll give it to you for free.
That's incredibly kind of you, Clive.
It doesn't make any difference to me, you see. You either buy it or you get it for free. I mean, I'm hoping most people are honest and just, pay.
And I think that's how the world should work in an ideal world. I think if there was more people like you and me around, I think the world would be a far better place, a far fairer place, quite frankly.
We could run it between us.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do that. I got a couple more questions. I know we've been going on for about an hour and 20 minutes now already, but a couple more before we go, if that's okay with you. My friend Robbie over in France has asked, bearing in mind due to the inept governments that many people are struggling financially right now, how can they source non-genetically modified supplements without paying really high prices compared to the standard cheap versions?
Well, that's easy. My website.
Perfect. That's excellent.
But why I started a supplement company years and years ago was because how the hell can you work out what to buy? You go into the health food store, they don't know. They've only been guided by the salespeople. You can't judge it just by price. So, yeah, I started a supplement company so that people could just get stuff that actually worked.
Yeah, no, that's
But with instructions that are true,
Yes, yeah, I think that's right, and I think it's amazing what you do. So thank you very much for that. And I just want to touch now on something we were speaking about before we came on air, and that's something that I think is just behind you, which we were talking about old technology and how we think as humans today we've got the most advanced technology ever, but you know a little bit different to that in terms of what technology was available to us a long time ago involving Nikola Tesla. Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, Nikola Tesla, 130 years ago, if you mentioned his name, everybody in the world would pretty much say he's the most famous scientist ever because he's the reason, not Edison, but Tesla is the reason we have light bulbs, electricity as we know it. He invented remote control. He invented the electric motor as we know it now. Hundreds of inventions. And he also invented 3 healing devices, but he wouldn't patent them. He patented everything, refused to patent the healing devices. And near the end of his life, his patent agent had always been telling him you really ought to spend more attention on the healing devices. It was only at the end of his life, which he publicly admitted that he regretted wasting his time on things that, when he could have. Anyway, so he invented a type of ozone generator. Basically, ozone had been around before, but his version is still the version that is used. He invented diathermy, essentially, along with others. People took his ideas and spread them, but ophthalmologists in hospitals still use diathermy today because with diathermy you can do surgery without a scalpel. So if you do surgery with electricity, it cauterizes and there's no bleeding. So for eye surgery, they still use basically this sort of technology. And then doctors, dentists used portable technology. But I got introduced to this by a medical doctor almost 20 years ago now. He explained to me how Tesla invented these things. They used to be in every hospital in the world, every big hospital. And he said, we should buy one. So I tracked one down secondhand. The very first person I used it on came out of pain right away. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. Second person I used it on, he was on morphine when he came to see me. He was in big trouble. He'd been a DJ at the Roundhouse in London, and he'd seen a speaker column about to collapse and probably kill this young girl. He was able to prop it up, but in doing so, he crushed 3 vertebrae. So I used this machine. Only the second time I'd ever used it. It didn't even have instruction. It had one knob. I mean, really easy to use. And he comes out of pain first time in 20 years. Bloody hell. And so I started tracking these old devices down. And now I've got about 6 people I work with around the world. The problem isn't finding them. Finding them is quite easy. The problem is restoring them because technology, how they work is you get 2 Tesla coils which are tuned to resonate with one another. So using resonance, you can create almost every frequency, so the harmonics and so on. So, you have spark gaps. You usually create the frequencies by having sparks, electromechanical stuff going on, like a spark plug and stuff. And so you show that to the average electrician these days, and they've no idea what they're even looking at. They don't know how to tune one Tesla coil with another and how to, they're insulated often with beeswax. I mean, it's just a whole other level of technology which got superseded. Valves came out, then transistors and solid state and so on. But this early technology, the Tesla original technology, is outstanding. And people who join the Secret Health Club will be able to see a video where I get 34 people out of pain in a row in less than 5 minutes of each one. 34 people in a row with 100-year-old piece of kit.
Incredible. That is just mind-blowing when you think about the technology that's been kind of suppressed down the years. It just every day I find out something new and think, geez, what else is there?
I mean, these bits of kit, although they have to be restored to be safe and sensible and so on, they were made to last. You know, expensive pieces of kit, hand-blown glass and all that. So where's the money in that? You know, and so they got taken out. But there were other reasons. It wasn't just the conspiracy of the Rockefeller drug cartel. It was actually that they interfered with radio. And radio came out, and these big, heavy, big hospital machines, I've got some that are really huge, they interfered with all the radios around. So they changed, because everyone was pissed off with their radios making a noise, to shortwave. The original ones were more like long wave. And it was only when people started dying that they realized that while the original tester versions were safe, once they changed to shortwave, things weren't so safe. And then the Second World War happened, and they just took them out entirely. But basically, if people are interested, I put all the information really behind the Secret Health Club, because I want people to. I mean, there's one rule for the Secret Health Club. Only one rule. You have to say that you're in favour of total health freedom. So if you're the bad guys trying to join the club, you can't. You're excluded because you're not in favour of total health freedom. So behind the club, I can say things that I can't say otherwise. Now, we've put a special, if you want to know about Tesla stuff, behind a £1 paywall. You know, paying a little bit of money creates a stronger contract. So you pay £1, now you get access to all the information about these machines. And if you want to buy one, I can put you in touch privately with how to get restored, incredible machines. And I've made videos about how to use them. A lot of practitioners use them, but quietly. I'm talking about this now because I don't do consultations or treatments anymore, so I can talk now. But it's a profession. It's a profession in a box. It's ludicrous.
And it's I heard you speak about this on a different podcast, and you spoke about the Rockefellers' influence on medicine and how they completely changed how we used to have lots of homeopathy hospitals and all that kind of stuff. And the one thing that I heard you speak about, which I had no idea about this, was the 1939 Cancer with a K Act here in the UK. Now, can you tell people about that? Because I found that fascinating.
Well, that was the Cancer Act with a C. You can talk about that one.
Oh, you're allowed for that one, are you?
Yeah. You see, the words you're not allowed to use are cure and cancer. You know, those are verboten. You can't use those. So in 1939, basically the pharmaceutical industry successfully corrupted the British government to the extent they said, unless you're a medical doctor, you're not allowed to treat cancer. And if you say it's curable, 2 years in jail. Right? They did the same in dentistry. They gave dentists the monopoly on teeth. Right? Nobody else is allowed to cure cancer. Nobody else is allowed to treat teeth. You have to be licensed, registered, pay your dues, and follow the dictates that you're given. So when I read the Cancer Act, it's a readable document, I suddenly realised it doesn't apply to Northern Ireland. So this is 15 years ago when I read it. I thought, well, that's interesting. One could set up a cancer clinic in Northern Ireland. So I talked to my legal advisor and I say, well, look what I've discovered. It doesn't cover Northern Ireland. He said, how much do you like living?
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, they don't like, people who claim to go against the orthodoxy of drug, surgery, radiation. I was talking years ago about reversal of autism. And at that point, I was getting death threats, as were everybody around me. Every time I'd put on a talk, there'd be a bomb threat and the building had to be evacuated. They don't want. There are certain areas they don't want you helping people, and autism and cancer with a K are the big two.
Yeah. I wonder why.
It would seem.
I wonder why. Yeah, it's incredible. I also heard you speaking on the podcast that I mentioned just now about you were speaking about children who were blindfolded,
Yes.
and who were taught how to see whilst blindfolded. Can you tell my viewers about that a little bit?
Yeah. I was in ophthalmic optics for many years. I worked with contact lenses, and I worked in a practice, and I dealt with ophthalmologists and so on. So it was my field for many years. And I read way back then, 40 years ago, about the Russian technology, the Russians who were teaching their blind children to see with their fingertips. Anyway, so I'd known about the capacity that we have to see and hear without ears, without eyes. And then I came across this incredible lady several years ago who is teaching children how to see without eyes. It turns out, and on the Secret Health Club, you'll see the video of dozens of children playing games, drawing, painting, fine paintings, totally blindfolded. They can't see a thing. And they, you can teach from about 3-year-old up to about 11-year-old how to see without their eyes in minutes, in some cases, in minutes. We have this ability and we don't know. So on the child section of the Secret Health Club, not only is there that video, and it's on the eye section, but there's another video which shows that babies have language on the day they're born. A baby on the day it's born immediately it's a language of sounds, not language. The sounds are like he or eh or oo or ah. And if you recognize the sound, one is saying I'm hungry, one's saying I've got wind, one's saying I'm taking a poo, all these things, hungry, tired. There are babies now where the parents have learnt these simple words, basic words, so the baby's hardly ever had to cry because they've known it's hungry. They haven't bothered to try and put it down to sleep, change its nappy when it doesn't need it, burp it when it doesn't need it. Babies have been telling, your mum didn't listen to a word you said. Now, if mum or dad ignores after 3 months, they stop making these noises. So the children whose parents have understood what they're saying, they get to language quicker. They don't cry so much. There are some incredible videos that everybody needs to know. If you're going to have a baby, you must look at the baby page. Essential.
Wow. Well, Clive, that's been absolutely fascinating. And that hour and a half has just flown by. And thank you so much for giving me all of your time this evening. It's been brilliant. Some of that information, I'm just going to have to go back. There was so much information there. I'm going to have to go back and watch myself, which is something that I don't particularly like doing. But your information was some of it was just mind blowing. So thank you very much for coming on, and I look forward to having a look around the Secret Health Club. That's going to be fascinating, and just brilliant. And thank you very much for your time this evening. And I'm sure that our paths will cross again soon.
Well, I hope so. We've only scratched the surface.
Yes, I know. There's so much. I had so many more questions, but we can do them another time, and hopefully you'll come back on again, maybe in a few months' time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clive. Well, there you go. How much information was there to take in? Incredible stuff. So I hope you found that interesting and illuminating, as I did. Wonderful. And I hope that you've all had a good week, and I wish that you have a fantastic week coming up. And I look forward to speaking to you all again next week. And as I say at the end of all of these, do something every day that makes someone else's life a little bit better. Thanks, everyone.